And welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us on this chilly, cloudy, a little breezy Tuesday afternoon. Meteorologist Justin Storm, Ag Director Bridgette Readel, and Chief Meteorologist Dean Wysocki are here. And how are you guys doing today? You lived up through all the wind and the rain and the thunder last night?
I think Dean was awake more me than me.
How much wind did we have?
So much wind.
Well, some. I mean, I slept through
I just
it
thought I'd give
mostly.
you the wind sound effects. I'm here to help.
Bridgette's here to help. Sorry, Bridget, what were you saying? You were coming in a little quiet over there.
That's no problem. I just realized that I probably got better sleep than Dean, even though there was lots of wind. And also, thank you to the Cass County Emergency Alert, because they call you when there's been a storm that's been issued in your area. 4 times last night, my phone was ringing. It was a lot.
Really?
You got a phone call?
Yeah. I got 4 different calls. They send text messages. There's a lot going on.
From who?
In that time frame. That was Cass County, their emergency center, when they warn you of weather alerts.
I
wasn't aware of that.
Unaware that they did that.
Wow.
Hi, welcome to rural Cass County.
I just have my weather radio that blares enough to wake the neighborhood. So once that goes off, you know you have to hit the basement or.
Yep.
You're
Mine
still
comes right in.
coughing.
It's been a week.
It's been 2 weeks.
It's been 2 weeks. Yeah.
Dean,
It won't go away.
that's not good.
It won't go away.
I've heard it all day.
Hey, I'll try and die a little quieter.
Please do.
Okay.
Man,
Don't mean to be so noisy.
so distracting over here. Me and Bridget are trying to have a conversation, and all I'm hearing is, "Go ahead." There we go. Yeah, man. Bedroom's over there.
Was there? Where? Yeah.
Yeah. What do you? There was.
There was.
Where is it?
Man, I wasn't aware of this either. Wow. We still have some heavy rain. Boy, did we pick up some healthy rainfall. Well, what did you get in Hunter there, Bridget?
So I am just under an inch. I had like 0.82. We have reports from over by Glendon. Steve was kind enough to send us a picture of his gauge. He had 1.09 inches of rain. And Terry down at Abercrombie let me know he has 3 inches of rainfall last night.
Yeah,
that was a lot.
There was a lot of areas that got 2 to 4 inches from, let's say, just around Roseau through Thief River, Crookston, Jamestown. Now there's some heavy rain continuing into Lakes Country from, let's say, Barnesville up through Pelican Rapids and DL. They're getting some heavy rain right now. And to the east of that, let's say Barnesville to Pelican Rapids, Detroit Lakes line, a tornado watch is going to be issued this afternoon from the storm.
That's weird.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, looking at temperatures, and here's one of the reasons.
In Minnesota.
In Minnesota, yeah.
Yeah, not us.
No, east of that area, yeah. So if you have any travel plans going east down 94 towards the cities, be careful for severe weather popping up this afternoon. But one of the reasons, we're 57 here right now, and an Elbow Lake is 77. So a good 20-degree spread, and obviously you're getting that spread in temperatures.
That's not very far.
No, it's not. So that's the reason for a pretty vigorous storm, active weather, big temperature contrast. All the ingredients are there for severe weather this afternoon. Not for here. We saw ours last night. We'll be quiet.
Yes.
We'll be quiet for the rest of the day, but chilly.
Let's see. What do we have? It was reported, I think it was 78 mile per hour wind gust by, where was that? Give me a second here.
Where was that power pole twisted?
Verona, North Dakota.
Verona.
78.
And
right
where
next
was
to Sharona?
Where was that power pole twisted?
What was that? Sabin?
It was Sabin.
I don't know. I didn't see the location
But
of
actually, the New Rockford area, New Rockford, Cheyenne, they also had some power outages last night as well.
Yeah, this is one of those big quad pole mega telephone wire structures. That thing was folded over itself. Like the big boy, not like just like your normal telephone pole, but like the one that feeds all the normal poles. It didn't break, but man, it was just toppled right over itself.
And twisted, not just like bent
Yeah,
over. This
and
thing was twisted.
I don't have access to the photo.
More
in this
twisted than
room.
you on a Friday night.
Oh, that's twisted. Then.
I know.
Holy moly. I was thinking, why don't they just hook up a big old tow rope to it and just pull it in the other direction and scratch out all the scratches.
Buff it out.
Buff out the
After you straighten it out.
Don't worry about the scratches, Captain. We'll buff them out at port.
Always do.
Oh, man. So the rest of the afternoon should be quiet, but chilly with those northwest winds kicking up. And the good news is tomorrow and Thursday we'll see a little more sunshine, but temperatures still below normal for this time of the year. Only in the low 70s tomorrow, mid 70s Thursday. Looks like some showers and thunderstorms possible late in the day on Thursday, just in time for the J. Thomas Cruise Night. I'm sure he'll be happy to hear that news. And then Friday and Saturday, scattered storms. And then Sunday looks to be nice. At least we'll have one nice day over the weekend, with highs Sunday coming closer to 80. And it looks like next week we will see some summer warmth build in. Not sure how long it's going to last, but at least we'll see a taste of it later next week.
Okay.
It's always next week, isn't it?
As Jay would say, there it is.
There it is. Oh, man.
All right, Bridgette, we've eaten up enough of your time. Let's talk about some ag.
Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, thank you to Gowan and Company. Gowan is one of our sponsors for our Here We Grow project, and they're outfitting me pretty well. I have a Sonoland t-shirt and pullover, so thanks to Gowan for making sure that when we go to the field to look at our corn, I'm standing outstanding in it. How's that? It's gonna stand out in the crowd. Also, thank you to Steffes Group. They've got some upcoming online as well as in-person auctions. Not nearly as many in person as we once did, but they would love to have you check out their website at thesteffesgroup.com, because you never know when there's something you can't live without, and they're probably selling it. And to Dakota Bank. So if you go over to Steffes Group and buy too much, you can talk to Chad at Dakota Bank and see about getting that covered. He is their ag lender. Dakota Bank is based out of Aberdeen, South Dakota, but also works right here in the Fargo-Moorhead area. And they are here to be your ag lender to help out with what you've got going on your farm. So one of the challenges that I have for folks not only who farm, but also garden, and this is called the Bury Your Underwear Soil Challenge. Now, depending on how you read that and where you put the commas, this is going to sound a little weird. But the premise is to display good soil health. And one way to do that is take a pair of cotton underwear and bury it into your garden or a field, and then come back 30 or 60 days later and see what has been breaking that down. Microbes, worms, other bugs, because realistically, all you should have left if you have a good, healthy soil is the elastic and maybe just a little bit of cotton. But overall, those pests are, we would call them pests, but those bugs and so forth are breaking down the carbon in the cotton and eating it. And they're breaking down all the other things that are in your soil as well. And that's just one way to look for and talk about healthy soils. So when Don Kinsler from NDSU joins us later this week, I kind of want to ask Don if he's done this, because he's all about good, healthy lawns and gardens. And I'm curious to see who else might have been burying their underwear in certain places around the area.
There you got something to try. See how healthy your soil is.
Something to do, eh? Interesting.
That's going to keep you busy.
Sure will. Very interesting.
Okay, so that's one thing that you can be doing, is making sure that your soil is all completely healthy. Now, that cornfield that we're working on raising over in the Glendon area, well, right now I'm going to be way more concerned about water on the field than if any of our corn looks yellowed. But if aside from heavy wet weather, sometimes you look at corn and you see some yellowing in it. Also, a shortened internode. That yellowing, by the way, would be on the plant new growth. And that's often a sign of sulfur deficiency. It's interesting to note that we now have to add sulfur to our corn crop every year, because in decades past, it wasn't a concern. But then the Clean Air Act was enacted in the 1990s, and it removed about 10 million tons of sulfur emissions from U.S. factories emissions. and we lost the free sulfur that was happening in our field. Sulfur is actually the fourth most important component when you look at nutrients behind nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And so with that decline of the free sulfur, we now have to start adding it. Sulfur is, if without it, we can see a significant yield reduction. And one of the things that when you do a soil test to make sure whether or not you need to add it, a good rule of thumb is that a 180 bushel corn crop will take 18 pounds of sulfur from your soil. So depending on what you're planting next, or even as you're going into a corn crop, you're going to want to manage for that need for sulfur. So Justin, we better have sulfur on our field if we're going to get to those bushels that you'd like to see.
We're going to have to put some more sulfur on it, I'm thinking.
Well, we might. And we're going to watch out for what this rain does, right? Thankfully, we don't have a drainage issue on this field, but having another inch of rain is kind of a lot. And so if you are in that area and you have what your rain totals have been, why don't you let us know? And you can call us on the Red Wing shoe line. That is 701-293-9000. Or you can email us or weather@flagfamily.com so that you can make sure to report what your rain totals are so we can keep up with what's happening in the region.
Got a question for you. When it comes to the heavier rains that we've been getting and seeing, anywhere between 1 and 4 inches of rain in spots on top of how much excess rain we've had, does that put any other concerns besides disease, fungus, standing water in the fields, but in terms of elements or nutrition in the soil, are there any concerns where at some point too much water just washes too much of something or dilutes too much of something away?
It can. It will cause breakdown of things like nitrogen, and so you'll get more leaching through the soil profile. So when the corn is ready for the uptake of that nitrogen, it's not there because it's leached away due to the water. Also, we do definitely mention disease, and that means the opportunity for us to fungicide later in the season. And thank you to Gow and Company once again. They're as a sponsor, they're going to provide us with a Fiance fungicide to help prevent some of those disease problems in field. But I also think about the fact that corn doesn't like wet feet. So if it's going to be in standing water at some point in time, with that scenario, you're going to have the reduction in yield because your corn's not actively growing the way it should because it's trying to fight off all the water that's in the field. So all of those things kind of total up to a bit more of a headache than most of us would want.
I see. Bridgette, do we have an entomologist coming on at some point in the next 30 days?
Oh, I think I can get that taken care of for us. So yes, any particular focus you'd like me to look for one of our entomology friends?
Ground hornets. I want to talk about those nasty little suckers for a half hour at some point.
Let me see what I can do to take care of your ground hornet
here's
concern.
My random thought of the days. You know how bad the ground hornets get in August? Like they just come out of nowhere and they're awful. They're everywhere.
Yes.
Well, do they just get up here in August, or are they already around? And if they are around, how does all the rain we've had do to the population? Are we going to be like another nasty year of ground hornets? Because, man, I just can't stand them things.
Okay. Ground hornet entomologist.
Right
I'm on it.
And if anyone listening has any fun topics that you want us to dive into, you can always send those requested topics to weather or ag, probably ag at flagfamily.com. You can also comment to the show live during our shows, comment boxes on Facebook and YouTube live. Or you can also always call into the show on the Red Wing shoe line. That's 701-293-9000. We got to take a moment here, get caught up with the American Ag Network. We'll do another rundown on the forecast. We'll touch on the potential for severe weather to our east into Minnesota. But when we come back, our guest will be joining us. That's Dr. Robin Holland, Foreign Animal Disease Diagnostic Laboratory Director, National Bio and AgroDefense Facility. It's a mouthful right there. I hope I got it all in there. But regardless, Dr. Robin Holland's going to be joining us when we come back. So if you have any questions for her, also utilize the Red Wing Shoe phone line. That's 701-293-9000. The Ag Network is next, and we'll be right back.
And welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. I am getting photos from Winkler, Manitoba, the next gen dealership up there. I speak there tomorrow, and I'm already getting some pictures of what their setup is looking like. And there's no doubt it's a little muddy, but it's getting better. It's getting way better. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody come out. We'll be working indoors as well as out tomorrow. And so the weather is going to look very, very nice. Dean had to leave because, well, somebody had to put that lung back in his chest cavity. That was, he's not doing very well, it seems.
Yeah, he's dying quietly in the other room. So
he's fine. He's fine.
He's good.
Good news is, I find it funny that we're going to talk to someone about disease diagnostics. Maybe we should have her take a look at Dean. So our guest today, our guest today is Dr. Robin Holland. She is the Foreign Animal Disease Diagnostic Lab Director. All of us looked at that title and went, her business card is like this big. It's got to be just huge, because she is with the National Bio and AgroDefense Facility. Dr. Holland, how are you?
Doing well. How are you today?
Fabulous.
Doing good.
So before we jump into, a whole list of questions that we've got for you, in your position, how did you get there? Are you a veterinarian if you're running an animal disease diagnostic lab, or what does that trajectory look like?
Oh, that's a great question. In order to oversee, especially an animal disease diagnostic laboratory, there needs to be that understanding of animal diseases in general. And so I do have a doctor of veterinary medicine, so I am a veterinarian. But I also have a PhD from the University of Illinois in microbiology and pathobiology. So I have that disease pathogenesis background as well. At the end of the day, I do actually consider myself a small town farm kid. I grew up on a family-owned and operated dairy farm from northwestern Illinois. So I love that I have those roots in agriculture and was able to integrate my passion for science and diagnostics and animal health into the career that I have here in the USDA.
Okay, hold on. Did little Robin ever think that someday she was going to be Dr. Robin and running this big giant lab, taking care of what sounds like the nuclear solution to animal health welfare?
Oh, never in a million years did I ever think that I would be here. And this is where I feel so fortunate to have this opportunity and then to work with other veterinarians and other scientists who are just as passionate about our mission in diagnostics and the different work that we do. So I feel very fortunate. Never would I ever imagine that this is where I would end up, but I feel very fortunate to be in this role.
Let's talk about this facility, if we could, the National Bio and AgroDefense Facility. And I came across this through some news articles, but also just in general conversation with folks at places like Commodity Classic, etc. I'm envisioning the Fort Knox of plant and animal research. Am I anywhere close to the right answer there?
It's a good description. A lot of times what we like to describe is that we're very similar to like the CDC, for example, but for animal health. So how we describe NBAF as a whole is we consider ourselves this next generation high containment laboratory facility. NBAF overall will help the USDA to protect the nation's agriculture, farmers, and citizens against the threat of potential impact of serious animal diseases. So at NBAF, scientists and other folks working in the lab, so technicians and veterinarians, will be able to work safely and securely to diagnose and research. There are three major categories of diseases that we work with. The first are called foreign or transboundary animal diseases. So these are diseases that can transfer into the United States from other countries. Then there are emerging diseases, which are either new or expanding significantly or not well known. And then zoonotic diseases that can transfer between animals and humans. So we do need to be very secure in the work that we have. There are other containment laboratories across the US that do similar work like this. The legacy facility for NBAF is the Plum Island Animal Disease Center. And then we have colleagues working in Ames, Iowa at the National Centers for Animal Health in similar type facilities.
So where is this located at in reference across the country?
For NBAF, we're located in Manhattan, Kansas. The Plum Island Animal Disease Center is off the coast of Connecticut in New York, and the National Center for Animal Health is in Ames, Iowa.
Okay.
And when you think about the facility, so there was one in Plum Island, and then there's also one in Ames, but your facility is the newest. So what brought about the reason to want to build a newer facility? Were we falling behind in security or something like that?
It's a great question, and there's two major components of it. One is needing to update the Plum Island Animal Disease Center. High containment facilities have an estimated timeline and for any facilities for what they're operational for. And so typically you're looking at about 50 or so years. The Plum Island Animal Disease Center has a phenomenal legacy of maintaining the highest standards of security in the work that they've been doing. The one difference between Plum Island and what we will be offering and having for services available at NBAF is the higher level of biosecurity. So at Plum Island, the diseases that are worked with are in what are called a biosafety level 3 facility. So that includes diseases like foot and mouth disease, African swine fever, and classical swine fever. There isn't work in those other categories of diseases that I mentioned for emerging and transboundary diseases. The focus of the Plum Island work is very focused on foreign and transboundary animal diseases at a risk group 3 level of activities. At NBAF, this is where it's unique in that we actually go up to the biosafety level 4 level of work. So that's where we can address work with emerging diseases, zoonotic diseases, and there's only a very small number of facilities globally that have the ability to be a BSL-4 with the capacity to hold large livestock. So that is something that's very unique. There were no issues at Plum Island. It's due to that expanded mission in order to address our global needs, in order to address emerging diseases and high consequence animal diseases.
Wow.
Okay. Okay. That when you're talking about diseases right there, well, gosh, I want to ask so many things that relate to like what we're looking at currently for disease and pathogens in livestock here in the US. But before we do that, it is 1:31 in the afternoon. We are at the bottom of the hour. We need to catch up with just a little bit of news. We're going to do the local news and then we're going to come back. And again, we are visiting with Dr. Robin Holland. She is, hold on, Robin, I don't want to miss a word in this title. She is the Foreign Animal Disease Diagnostic Laboratory Director with the National Bio and AgroDefense Facility. And I promise to stop making long title jokes after that. I'm done. Now, we will continue with Robin right after this.
And 136, thanks for returning to Weather and Ag in Focus. We're rejoining our guest, Dr. Robin Holland, the Foreign Animal Disease Diagnostic Laboratory Director from the National Bio and AgroDefense Facility. And if you have any questions for Dr. Robin Holland or us, feel free to call in and join in on our conversation. 701-293-9000 is the Red Wing Shoe line, or you can reach us via email, weather or ag at flagfamily.com. Now, Dr. Robin, as the Foreign Animal Disease Diagnostic Laboratory Director, what is it exactly that you're doing and what's going on at the facility that you work in?
Great question. So I'll first note that for our Foreign Animal Disease Diagnostic Laboratory, if it may help, the short term for it, we call it FADL, to help with
fun.
the description.
Okay.
So for FADL, we're actually very fortunate that we have staff who are in 3 different duty stations. So right now, about 1/3 of our staff currently are at the National Bio and AgroDefense Facility. And as I noted, NBAF is replacing the Plum Island Animal Disease Center, but this is a process that takes time to do. So our staff who are at NBAF are doing all the work that's needed in establishing a laboratory. And so it's things like writing standard operating procedures, identifying where one piece of equipment should go, completing training with staff to make sure they understand how to work with that equipment, and then working with all of our operational units to understand workflows in our lab spaces. So it's all that early stand-up type of work that we're doing. About 2/3 of our staff are stationed at the Plum Island Animal Disease Center for FADL, and the work that our staff there are doing is everything that is encompassing a diagnostic laboratory. So this includes receiving samples from the field, and we receive samples nationally and internationally in order to do diagnostic testing for high consequence animal diseases. So these are pooch samples, they're coming into our lab, we're testing, and thankfully all of the results that we're sending out are negative to say the United States remains free of those high consequence diseases, i.e. foot and mouth disease, African swine fever, and classical swine fever. But we also have other programs that support that core mission of diagnostics. So this includes producing reagents that we can use in our laboratory, making proficiency testing panels to make sure that our staff are competent and proficient in being able to diagnose those diseases. We do some methods development, creating new assays so we can be on the front edge of our diagnostics and the work that we do. So there's a lot of different efforts that we have ongoing in being a diagnostic laboratory. And then the third group that we're very fortunate to have is that we actually have staff who are stationed in Dorado, Puerto Rico. This is a laboratory that does surveillance testing for African swine fever and classical swine fever. And this laboratory was established a few years ago in response to the detection of African swine fever in the Dominican Republic. And so the team in the Dorado lab has been doing a significant amount of diagnostics of swine across the island of Puerto Rico. So we can say with confidence that African swine fever is not there. And if it were to be introduced, we would detect it as soon as possible due to the sheer volume of testing that our staff are doing, and also the targeted stress testing approaches to higher risk populations.
Dr. Holland, this might sound kind of crazy, but I want to dispel the myths that this is not some sort of Hollywood scene where you're carrying the giant tube of green glowing plutonium from site to site. So if you're going to move a disease from the existing facility at Plum Island over to Manhattan, Kansas, how do you do that? And if you have, for instance, samples of like anthrax, which is a highly contagious within livestock, how would you do that, or wouldn't you?
It's a good question because we do recognize that we're not moving, across the street. We're moving halfway across the country. Anything that's a biological material is safely, securely of how that's being moved. But we're not moving things like, equipment that's in our lab spaces. So if we have sensitive pieces of equipment for diagnostics like PCR machines or sequencers or microscopes, we're actually not moving those. Those are ones that we're just purchasing brand new at NBAF. And then what that also allows is us to maintain operations in both locations, because we don't want to decommission a diagnostic program at Plum Island before it's fully established at NBAF. And one of the best ways to do that is to make sure that we're doing the work at the same time. So our newer staff at NBAF are getting the same result that our staff at Plum Island are getting. So there's a lot of that overlap in that work. So there's actually not a lot of like those types of materials that would be moving. It's our program that is moving. So our documents, the assays that we run, the workflows that we have, that knowledge and that expertise is what's moving.
Okay, that makes a great deal of sense because sometimes folks are just wondering what's there and what's not. And so, for your facility, do you think, let me see if I could, you're pretty much only handling animal, or do you also have plant diagnostics? Because you're an animal disease specialist, but is there someone else who's a counterpart to you that handles it with plants?
Excellent question. Our mission at NBAF is purely focused on animal diseases. And
Okay.
so African swine fever, classical swine fever, foot and mouth disease are our big ones. There are some additional diseases that will be added into our scope of our work that we didn't have the capacity to do this work at Plum Island, but none of that will involve work with plants. There are other facilities across the US that work with various plant diseases. I actually don't know them off the top of my head, but it's a great
It's
question.
okay.
But for our work that we have, it is focused on the animal diseases.
So, in terms of new diseases affecting animals, and I'll kind of take the route of bird flu infecting cattle or dairy cattle, what significance and role does that play in the operations of the facility and the program of either research or procedures, or if you guys are tackling that or not?
Excellent question. So for NBAF, we're actually not doing any work with avian flu and the involvement with cattle. There's other facilities in the USDA that are doing that work. So that's actually not part of our mission at NBAF. The part that is a question is with emerging diseases. So we don't know what could be coming next. With emerging diseases, those are diseases that move into a different location. Maybe they go into a different species, or if it's a new disease that we really didn't have much detection for previously and then it expanded. So those are things that would be part of our mission, but ultimately it depends on the species that are affected. Is it something that is part of our mission scope? Because we are very focused on livestock, really the focus being on cattle and swine at NBAF. So if there were to be an emerging disease in a species that's not part of our scope of mission, we would be working with our colleagues across the other USDA facilities as well as the CDC if it was a zoonotic disease. So we'd be leveraging our experts and colleagues in other agencies and facilities to identify which group is the best served to address that response. And for something like high path in cattle, that's actually not part of our mission scope with NBAF.
So, what are the thoughts or the fear of a new disease popping up? Or what concerns do you have? I don't know if this is something that we usually see something new every 3 years or something, or maybe every 10 years, but where does that kind of sit on a scale of concerns of something new coming?
Justin, I might want
It's
to tag
always
on to you there because I think I might have something that adds to your answer,
Yeah, go
Dr.
ahead.
Holland, and that would be because you specialize in swine and cattle. Would I think as along the lines of what Justin is asking, what's going to be worse if we get it, the swine flu or the foot and mouth disease? And how often would we see a reoccurrence of something new coming, like in that 5 year or 10 year time frame?
Those are all excellent questions. And to the urgency and the concern that we have, what I'll say is that people are very proactive in trying to understand where those risks are, but it's also really tough to identify an unknown of what could be coming when we don't actually know what those diseases are or what things may expand in a shorter period of time. And so to address that, we actually have several different research units at NBAF to address those needs. So certainly I'm representing the Foreign Animal Disease Diagnostic Laboratory, and our mission is on diagnostics. And we cover all the diseases within our scope. But for our research units that are within the Agricultural Research Service, we have this is a bit of alphabet soup as well, but there's one called FADRU. It's the Foreign Animal Disease Research Unit. That one works on diseases that we know are foreign to the US that have been on our radar for a long time. And so the big ones are African swine fever, classical swine fever, and foot and mouth disease. Those three diseases affecting swine and cattle are not in the United States. And if they were to be introduced, this would have a significant impact on our ag economy. So it's great that we have this dedicated group to identify those knowns of historical threats that we have and those risks. So they are working on advancing our diagnostics and just understanding those diseases more. We have another group that is new at NBAF. It's called FABIDRU. It's the Foreign Arthropod-Borne Animal Disease Research Unit. And they're doing the work with the zoonotic agents and the arthropod-borne agents that are not currently part of our scope of mission at plum. So this includes things like Rift Valley fever virus and Japanese encephalitis virus. So those are viruses that we know are out there. They're not in the United States, again, pose a risk to our ag economy, but they're not ones that we did as much work on previously. And so there's a lot of area for growth and understanding those diseases. So those are in that category of expanding risk and concern that we want to have more investment on. And then the other group is called ZEDRU. It's a Zoonotic and Emerging Disease Research Unit. And the fact that we have a dedicated group to zoonotic and emerging diseases is fantastic, because we recognize that this is a concern, but there's also a lot of unknowns. So there are some diseases that this group will be working with, including Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever, Hendra, Nipah viruses. These are also ones that are in the zoonotic category, so they affect both animals and humans, and they're of higher risk. And this is where we bring in the BSL-4 with that higher risk type of work. But the ZEDRU unit is also there to identify some of those risk factors. So what are those criteria of elevating something to a higher concern to say, this is an emerging disease, we need to address this earlier on before it expands further. And that group, with the research and the scientists that are there, they would be able to address those needs earlier on in their work.
Wow. I had no idea all this stuff went on in the background, Bridgette.
I know. I want to come and work for you guys just so I can make names and acronyms to go with all the things that you do. Wow.
So I got another one here, and this may or may not be a two-part answer to the question, but in terms of things that are on your watch right now and or around the world, and also maybe something that has been eradicated or is very hit or miss, what is the most dangerous disease, either in fatality or transferring, that has a concern to you if it were to go rampant or reemerge?
Great question. And I will admit my bias on this because of the work that we have in FATL. I would say the two big ones of concern are foot and mouth disease and African swine fever for our ag communities. So foot and mouth disease, it's considered a vesicular disease, meaning that animals that become infected have lesions that look like blisters in their feet and in their mouths. So hence why foot and mouth disease is very descriptive. The last time that FMD was detected in the United States, it was in the 1920s. It's been a very long time since FMD has been removed from the United States. And the reason, or one of the major factors for why FMD has not been in the United States for such a long time, is because of the proactive efforts of scientists and folks protecting our U.S. economy and the work that's been happening at Plum Island in order to protect U.S. agriculture and livestock from FMD. FMD is one of the biggest economic impact diseases, and so we're very proactive in our diagnostics and surveillance efforts, so we can say that it's not here and that we're protecting the U.S. from an introduction. Then African swine fever only affects swine, and for African swine fever, it's actually never been detected in the United States. And so it's been expanding globally in other countries. And so as we progress through time, there's fewer and fewer countries that are actually ASF free, and the United States is one of them. Back in 2021, African swine fever was detected in the Dominican Republic, and that was actually the first time that ASF had been detected in the entire Western Hemisphere since the 1980s. And so because of that detection and the proximity of the island of Hispaniola to the United States, the USDA implemented a variety of response measures to protect our borders more securely. So this included having increased surveillance efforts and establishing what's called a protection zone around the island of Puerto Rico, as well as more surveillance activities in feral swine populations. So again, we can say with confidence that ASF is not here. And if it were to be introduced, we really would detect it as soon as possible because of the volume of testing that we're doing, not only in Puerto Rico, but in the US overall, so we can have that increased surveillance and knowledge about that the disease is not here.
Wow, very interesting. Well, Dr. Robin Holland, I want to thank you for coming on the program with us and sharing a little bit about what you do and something that I had no idea even existed in the first place. So, Bridgette, good find with the guest again.
This has been so much fun to listen to. Thank you.
It has been. Robin, if anybody wants to gain more information about what we were talking about, whether it was FATL or what was the other one, I can't remember the other acronym now. It started with a D, I'm pretty sure. But
there's a variety of them. Where
where could somebody go to get more information about the National Bio and AgroDefense facility, or a little bit more about what you do?
Great question. So NBAF does have a website. So if folks go online, it's through the USDA website. So if you search for National Bio and Agro Defense Facility, you can see all the information about our mission scope, and we'll review all of those acronyms that I talked about a little bit ago. And also, if folks want to reach out, NBAF is very fortunate that we have a dedicated communications team on site. So if anybody does have any questions or outreach in general, they're welcome to email NBAF, NBAF at USDA.gov, and our communications team is happy to reach out and help.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it. Well, we got to take a quick moment here. When we come back, we got another ag topic to cover. We got a rundown on the forecast, and any last questions that you might have, you can get those questions to us via email, weather.or.ag@flagfamily.com, or call us directly and join in on the fun. 701-293-9000 is the Red Wing Shoe phone line. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. So very glad you're joining us today. It has been just a plethora of things going on, what with weather overnight, maybe more to come, guests, ag headlines. Well, let's tackle them one at a time. So Justin, what are we going to do for weather tonight, tomorrow, etc. I'm traveling, so I'd really like you to bring this all back a little bit.
We're going to make the best
smoother.
of it, Bridget. How's that?
That'd be great. Thanks.
As Ronnie would say, it is what it is.
That's true.
Yeah, we've had a lot of rain. I think we're over the rain, and for the most part, we're done with the rain for a little bit, at least for most of us. It's not going to be completely dry, but for the most part, it'll be dry until we head to the end of the week, where our next chance for storms are going to be. But areas to our east in Minnesota are getting another round of showers and storms, some ongoing from Fergus Falls to Detroit Lakes up towards Bemidji and into areas of northern Minnesota into the Hibbing region and northeastern Minnesota. That's along a cold front that basically stalled over us last night, bringing us the 1 to 4 inches of rain around the area and 50 to 70 some odd mile per hour wind gusts. That threat for severe weather is now pushing off to our east. It's going to work its way more into central Minnesota as we head through this afternoon and evening. There is a tornado watch in effect for really most of Minnesota, with an exception for far western Minnesota. So say if you go from Pipestone, Marshall, Montevideo, up towards Alexandria, Wadena, up towards LaPorte, east of Bemidji, everywhere east of that to the Wisconsin border basically is under a tornado watch until I'm pretty sure 8 o'clock this evening. That'd be another 6 hours. So yeah, until 8 o'clock this evening. So they're going to watch for some stronger storms to develop throughout the day. Currently, there is one severe thunderstorm warning heading into LaPorte, Minnesota right now. Just general thunderstorms around that. What we're going to experience here in eastern North Dakota is basically done with the rain showers, with an exception for a few south of I-94 and a couple in the far southern valley. It's just cloudy and breezy conditions and temperatures in the 60s and 50s, and we'll see them temperatures dropping down to the lower 50s for tonight. A few light showers here or there in the northern half of the state. And for tomorrow, we'll mix in some more sunshine. Looks like a dry day, low 70s, light and variable wind. And for Thursday, it will be nice as well. Partly cloudy, mid to upper 70s. It does come with a slight chance for a few spotty showers by the end of the day into your Thursday night. Better chance for scattered storms will come later in the day on Friday and into Friday night, with temperatures in the 70s, and then just a couple spotty showers on Saturday with temps a few degrees either side of 80 for the weekend, Bridget. So all in all, not too bad, just a little breezy for the weekend.
Well, I think that's probably going to be best. We're going to make that work as well as we can. So thank you for giving us the great insight of the weather. It's going to be a good week. We'll get more done, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I think that'll wrap it up for us, though, Bridget.
I think it will. Who's that guy who's on next?
Some guy calls himself Jay Thomas. He said he's got a show coming up, so he wants me to kick rocks. So make some room for him. Jay Thomas show's coming up next.